Hey everyone, and welcome back to One Up. It's your host, Uttapan Dragon, and in this series I provide you guys with some gameplay and my honest thoughts and opinions on games that I've played. And today, we're going to be taking a look at Trek To Yomi. So before I get on with the video, I've noticed some new subscribers. I just wanted to thank you guys for all of your support. It truly means the world to me, and I'm glad to know that you guys are enjoying the content. And now that I dropped that absolute cringe bomb on y'all, let's get busy. So if you guys have watched my Ghostwire Tokyo video, you already know that I absolutely love Japanese culture and mythology. So you can only imagine how excited I was when I stumbled upon Trek To Yomi. And given what a unique setting the game had, I truly was looking forward to playing it. To explain what I mean by unique, the game has a free roaming camera that often tried to depict a 2D game, but also had some 3D angles as well. But to top that off, the entire game is set in black and white. Now, this is a very risky move for a developer to pull, and honestly, I would have expected the game to be insane because of said risk. With this type of risk, the game has to either be a hit or a miss. But unfortunately, in this situation, I would have to say that the developers were swinging with both their eyes closed. So the game is developed by Flying Wild Hog, and you play as Hiroki, a samurai whose village has just been pillaged. And Hiroki, along with who I could only assume was his girlfriend and his sensei, all die in the process of trying to save his village. And with that, the game is about him, in death, trying to get back to his village and life to seek vengeance. So given that the game is supposedly depicting a 2D game, it's a follow the pathway type of game. But it also has a very linear game progression. The game alternates between three environments: the village that Hiroki is from, a forest, and what I assumed was this game's version of the afterlife. But even with the game being black and white and 2D, the world design was relatively great in detail. I was both surprised and pleased by this because even though it was in black and white, the detail was good enough for me to kind of get an understanding of what the colors of this world would be. And I took that opportunity to subconsciously fill in those colors for myself. And because of this, I often found myself forgetting that the game was in black and white in the first place. It was a really good experience having to use my imagination while playing a game for a change. Now, there was some iffy stuff going on, specifically with the camera angles and the audio of the game. The camera angles weren't bad exactly, but it was rather questionable. It often went from reasonable to overly exaggerated in order to give a cinematic type of effect. And my problem with the audio tied up with the camera angles because it felt like it wasn't even attached to the way the camera was positioned. For example, the camera would be right on the main protagonist, but it would sound like he was so far away. Or it would be positioned away from the area the protagonist was in, but it would sound very loud. And this was a constant throughout the game. I kinda attributed that to the fact that I wear a headset and play off a monitor. Maybe it would be different on a TV, but it still was very bad. And honestly, that wasn't even close to how bad the game's combat and overall development was. The combat of this game is what I like to call methodical combat, or for a lack of a better definition, it's Souls-like. The reason for me saying this is because the combat of this game has a stamina system. Each strike, roll, and in this case deflect costs stamina, but only in combat for some reason. Now, I already know my fellow From Software veterans are saying what I'm thinking, but I'm not gonna say it because if you've watched any of my videos, you already know that I never compare any game I review to any other game. So Hiroki, comes equipped with a samurai sword, and as the game progresses he gets a bow, kunais, and a very cool looking musket type firearm. These items run on an ammo system, and once used can only be refilled by collecting or finding the ammo as you progress through the game. Now, using the bow and the kunai did feel relatively seamless and purposeful in combat. The musket, however, had a very long load and fire animation and was definitely an item to be used situationally. Now, all that is good and well. My problem with the combat was that it was set upon such a flawed system. In order to perform combat arts or use combos, you had to use the left analog stick by either tapping it back or forward and following that by either pressing light or heavy attacks. And because it is supposedly a 2D game, you could only move backward or forward. This entirely messed up your attempt at performing combat arts most of the time, because the game would read your forward or backward tap as a prompt to move forward or backward instead of beginning the combo. And for some weird reason, the efficiency you perform these combos depended on the difficulty setting you chose. The higher the difficulty, the harder it became to perform combos. In addition to the things that put combat in the dog box was its defense system. Given that you are only equipped with a sword and some projectiles, your only source of guarding yourself against enemy attacks is deflection. By tapping the guard or block input at the right moment before an enemy attack landed, you would deflect their sword and perform a parry. That sounds great, if it actually worked properly. More often than not, the deflection or an attempt to parry didn't work, and the enemy attacks would either be exaggeratedly obvious or so badly telegraphed that you didn't even know what hit you. The deflection mechanism also didn't work against boss attacks, arrows and bullets. Combat did however have one good aspect, and that would be the enemy types. There were 3 enemy types, and these enemies were unique to the environment that you encountered them in. I could see that the developers also tried to have unique bosses, but overall they looked very badly designed and they really felt out of place. Paired with the fact that you couldn't deflect their attacks, it made encountering them truly disturbing. Dying in this game really sucked, and not because of difficulty, because in my experience I didn't find the game very difficult. Rather, I found it very annoying, because death felt like I was cheated or killed in a very cheap way. Especially because there was no healing system, and all you had were these little Jesus statues that you used not only as a checkpoint, but it also replenished your health. Now at the beginning of the game, the placement of these Jesus statues were excessive. You always had one before and after a balanced amount of combat encounters. But towards the final 2 chapters of the game, the developers threw whatever they had at you in order to prolong the game or make it seem like it was difficult by putting you through a long line of multiple enemies with less Jesus statues. The combat of the last 2 chapters truly had no balance, and it became apparent that it wasn't tested before the developers put it out, because combat went from reasonably difficult to a feeling of me being absolutely annoyed, and honestly, I just couldn't wait for the game to be over at that point. There was no main or side mission structure at all, as well as a total lack of story or points to the story. Because towards the ending of the game, things started to get very confusing and all over the place. I mean, it went from him going on a revenge mission to an entirely different self-discovery mission. And this is where the lack of development in the game showed the most, because honestly, I had no idea why I was doing any of what I was doing for in the first place. There was no build up to the story and a lack of development of said story afterwards, which led to me having no interest in the main protagonist and his problems, along with me not feeling a sense of importance to the characters in the game that were supposed to be important to the main protagonist. The game did, however, give you 3 choices of a path to choose from, weirdly 3 different times throughout the game. And these paths are supposed to lead the protagonist to 4 different outcomes of the game's ending. But as I said, I really didn't care which path I chose, because due to a lack of story and character development, I didn't feel any sense of consequence to those choices. If it wasn't for the minor exploration the game offered, in which you could find some collectibles and upgrade the character and his items, the journey you were on felt totally pointless and empty. With my experience, there is no reason for replayability, because even though the game had 4 different endings to grind towards, it was all pointless to achieve. The game had 0 world building, 0 story and character development, and 0 mission purpose and structure. And because of this, I'm going to give this game a 1 out of 10, which is an absolute first for me. And the one that it got is totally composed of the world design and the attempt the developers made to be unique. The game truly was very bad. It truly felt all over the place and overall very rushed, and not because it took me less than 8 hours to complete. I will not be looking forward to, nor would I play the next edition from the developers, because even though I give a lot of the games I review hope for the future or a second chance, a lot of those games were actually good with just some minor flaws. However, I can't ignore my first impressions of a game, especially when it costs money and time. And that, my friends, is going to bring us to the end of this video. I gave you guys some gameplay and my experience with the game, so that you could do the same in the comment section below. If you are unfortunate enough to play this game, tell me about your experience in the comment section. Or, if you actually enjoyed it, let me know about that as well. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. My posting schedule is almost as bad as this game, so hit the bell notification because it will inform you of the next video I post. And with that being said, I'll see y'all there.